When Jumanji was released in 1995, it arrived disguised as a family adventure, yet beneath its spectacle lay a far darker and more unsettling idea. The film is not truly about a game, but about time stolen and returned. From its earliest scenes, Jumanji frames childhood as something fragile, easily interrupted, and almost impossible to recover once lost. This thematic weight separated it from most fantasy films of its era, giving it an emotional gravity that many viewers only recognized years later. The origin of Jumanji traces back to a short children's book by Chris Van Allsburg, whose stories often explored quiet terror rather than comfort. The filmmakers expanded a slim, ambiguous tale into a full narrative, but they preserved its core unease. The game is never playful. It does not adapt to the players. It does not negotiate. From the beginning, Jumanji is portrayed as an object with intent, a force that advances regardless of human readiness. That indifference is what makes it frightening even today. Robin Williams' casting as Alan Parrish was central to this emotional depth. Williams was known for manic energy and humor, yet here he plays a man emotionally frozen at the age he disappeared. His performance is restrained, almost hesitant. Alan does not return triumphant or wise, but disoriented and grieving. This choice transformed the film into a meditation on arrested development, long before the term became common in popular psychology. One little-known detail is that Williams approached Alan not as a hero, but as a survivor. He studied trauma responses and deliberately avoided bravado. Alan's fear of the game is not exaggerated, it is earned. He has lived decades in a place where rules are cruel and random. That authenticity gives the character credibility and explains why the film resonates so strongly with adults who saw it as children. The town of Brantford itself plays a crucial role. It is not a generic setting, but a space shaped by inheritance, expectation, and unspoken disappointment. Alan's relationship with his father reflects a rigid vision of success and masculinity common in mid-century America. The shoe factory, the formal dinner, the insistence on toughness all frame Alan's childhood as emotionally constricted. When the jungle erupts into this orderly town, it feels less like fantasy intrusion and more like suppressed chaos finally breaking through. The practical effects of Jumanji were unusually ambitious for the time. Many of the animals were created using early CGI, but the filmmakers insisted on blending them with physical elements whenever possible. Sets were damaged for real, floors collapsed physically, and water flooded interiors without digital shortcuts. This tactile destruction grounds the fantasy, making the threat feel tangible rather than abstract. Even now, that physicality gives the film a weight many later effects-driven adventures lack. The sound design of Jumanji is another overlooked achievement. The drums are not merely musical cues, they function as a heartbeat. Their rhythm accelerates tension long before danger appears on screen. The sound is intentionally primitive, echoing ritual rather than melody. This choice reinforces the idea that the game operates by ancient rules, untouched by modern logic. The drums do not invite participation, they warn. Jonathan Hyde's dual role as both Alan's father and the hunter Van Pelt was not a coincidence. This casting choice externalizes Alan's fear of authority and judgment. Van Pelt is not simply a villain, he is the embodiment of pursuit and punishment. He hunts Alan not because of personal malice, but because that is his function. This mirrors Alan's childhood experience of pressure without explanation, making the conflict psychological as much as physical. The children, Judy and Peter, are not written as passive companions. They represent different responses to fear. Judy becomes hypervigilant and nurturing, while Peter oscillates between recklessness and guilt. Their reactions feel authentic, grounding the fantastical events in recognizable emotional patterns. The film does not protect them from consequence, allowing fear to shape them visibly as the story unfolds. One of the film's most surprising elements is its treatment of choice. Jumanji never forces players to begin, but once started, withdrawal is impossible. This structure transforms curiosity into commitment. It suggests that some decisions, once made, redefine a life entirely. That message feels particularly resonant in hindsight, speaking to moments that divide life into before and after. Even the game's rules are deliberately incomplete. Players are never given full instructions. They learn only through loss. This absence of guidance is crucial. It denies the comfort of mastery and reinforces vulnerability. Knowledge arrives too late to prevent damage, only early enough to ensure survival. That distinction gives Jumaji its enduring sense of danger. By the time the board game reveals itself as something that must be finished rather than defeated, the film has quietly shifted its focus. The true challenge is not escaping the jungle, but facing the years that were taken. Jumanji understands that adventure is thrilling, but return is complicated. And it is this recognition, woven beneath spectacle and sound, that gives the film a lasting emotional resonance, preparing the ground for a story not about winning, but about reclaiming what was almost lost forever. As Jumanji continues, the film deepens its exploration of fear by refusing to make the jungle exotic or wondrous. The dangers that emerge from the game are not mythical creatures or distant fantasies. They are animals, weather, and instincts that feel brutally real. The stampede, the insects, the creeping vines all evoke primal threats embedded deep in human memory. This choice grounds the fantasy in evolutionary fear, making the danger instinctive rather than imaginative. Even today, those sequences provoke unease because they bypass logic and speak directly to survival instinct. The character of Sarah Whittle offers another quietly complex layer. When she first appears as an adult, she is defined by social withdrawal and unresolved guilt. Her life has stalled not because she entered the game, but because she survived it. Sarah remembers everything, and that memory becomes a burden rather than a gift. The film presents trauma not only as something caused by direct harm, but also by being believed too late. Her isolation reflects the cost of truth dismissed, a theme that resonates strongly in any era shaped by disbelief and denial. Bonnie Hunt's performance as Sarah is intentionally subdued. She avoids melodrama, portraying fear as something internalized and habitual. Her laughter, when it appears, carries fragility rather than joy. This restraint allows Sarah to function as a counterpoint to Alan. While Alan lost time, Sarah lost trust in reality itself. Their reunion is not romanticized. It is awkward, cautious, and hesitant. That realism gives their relationship emotional credibility often absent from fantasy films. The film's use of time operates on two distinct levels. On the surface, Jumanji manipulates chronology through disappearance and return. Beneath that, it explores emotional time, the way fear can freeze growth. Alan emerges physically older but emotionally unchanged, while Sarah ages emotionally but remains trapped by memory. The game disrupts clocks, but the real damage is done to identity. This dual treatment of time elevates the narrative beyond adventure into something closer to reflection. One often overlooked detail is how rarely the film relies on traditional humor during moments of danger. Jokes appear in transitions, not crises. This separation preserves tension and prevents fear from dissolving into comedy. Robin Williams, famous for improvisation, deliberately restrained his instincts during the most intense scenes. That discipline allows the danger to feel authentic rather than performative, reinforcing the stakes even for adult viewers. The visual design of the jungle itself is intentionally claustrophobic. Instead of wide, majestic landscapes, the environments feel dense and enclosing. Vines intrude into domestic spaces, animals crash through walls, and vegetation overwhelms architecture. Civilization is not conquered through battle, but smothered through persistence. This imagery suggests that order is fragile, always vulnerable to being reclaimed by chaos. The jungle does not attack with intention, it advances because it can. Jumanji also plays with the idea of spectatorship. The characters are forced to watch disasters unfold before they can respond. Dice are rolled, consequences announced, and only then does the danger arrive. This delay creates helpless anticipation, a form of suspense rooted in inevitability. The audience shares this experience, knowing what is coming but powerless to intervene. That shared helplessness deepens engagement, binding viewer and character emotionally. The adult world in Jumanji is portrayed as largely ineffective. Police, authorities, and bystanders are overwhelmed or absent. This is not a critique of incompetence, but a reflection of scale. The threat introduced by the game is not criminal or political, it is elemental. Institutions designed to manage order are useless against forces that do not recognize rules. This framing subtly reinforces the film's focus on personal responsibility and cooperation over external rescue. The house itself becomes a character as the story progresses. Once a symbol of inheritance and expectation, it transforms into a battleground and refuge simultaneously. Its deterioration mirrors the character's emotional exposure. Walls fall, floors break, and boundaries dissolve. The domestic space can no longer protect, forcing its inhabitants to adapt rather than hide. This transformation reflects the film's belief that safety is not static, it must be actively defended. Another striking aspect is the film's refusal to explain the game's origin. There is no backstory, no ancient curse spelled out, no villain behind the mechanism. This absence preserves mystery and prevents rationalization. The game exists, and that is enough. By denying explanation, Jumanji resists closure through knowledge, insisting instead on resolution through endurance and cooperation. As the story advances, it becomes increasingly clear that the game's true function is not punishment, but exposure. It reveals fear, guilt, courage, and resilience without judgment. Characters are not tested to prove worth, but to confront what they avoid. That distinction gives the film its emotional durability. Jumanji does not reward bravery with glory. It rewards persistence with continuation, preparing the audience for an ending that will not erase pain, but will redefine its place in memory. As Jumanji approaches its conclusion, the film makes a quiet but decisive shift. The spectacle remains, yet the focus turns inward, toward consequence and choice. By this point, it is clear that the game is not an antagonist to be defeated, but a condition to be endured. The characters no longer react with panic alone, they act with intention. Fear remains, but it is no longer paralyzing. This evolution marks the true arc of the story, one defined not by survival, but by responsibility. Alan's relationship with the game undergoes its most significant transformation here. Early on, he attempts to avoid it, even destroy it. Later, he understands that resistance is futile. The only way forward is completion. This acceptance is not heroic bravado, it is resignation tempered by resolve. Alan does not believe he can win. He believes only that he must finish. That distinction gives his final actions a solemn gravity rarely granted to protagonists in family cinema. The return of Van Pelt near the end reinforces this internal conflict. The hunter is no longer merely a pursuer, he becomes a reminder that escape is temporary. Van Pelt does not represent death, but inevitability. He appears whenever Alan hesitates, embodying the cost of avoidance. The confrontation between them is brief and unspectacular, deliberately denying catharsis. The threat is neutralized, but not through dominance. It ends because the game demands progress, not because the hero asserts control. One of the film's most striking choices is how it handles courage. There is no triumphant speech, no rallying cry. Courage appears as compliance with fear rather than its absence. Characters act while afraid, not after fear has passed. This portrayal aligns closely with real psychological resilience, where bravery is measured by continuation, not confidence. The film never suggests that fear disappears. It suggests only that it can be carried. The final rolls of the dice are weighted with a sense of ritual. Each throw feels less like chance and more like acknowledgement. By now, the characters understand that the game responds not to strategy, but to commitment. Rules remain opaque, outcomes unpredictable. Control is an illusion. What matters is presence. This acceptance transforms the game from a tormentor into a test of endurance, reframing its cruelty as indifference rather than malice. The moment the game ends, time collapses inward. The reversal is sudden, almost abrupt. Years vanish, wounds close, destruction recedes. Yet the film is careful not to frame this as erasure. Memory remains. Alan and Sarah retain knowledge of what was endured, and that memory shapes their choices. This detail is crucial. The past is not undone, it is integrated. The film rejects the fantasy of undoing trauma, offering instead the possibility of recontextualizing it. Alan's final interaction with his father is brief but profound. He speaks differently, not with defiance or fear, but with clarity. The power dynamic has shifted, not through confrontation, but through understanding. Alan no longer needs approval, he offers connection instead. This emotional resolution is understated, yet it carries the weight of the entire film. The jungle did not teach Alan strength. It taught him proportion. The decision Alan and Sarah make to intervene in the past further complicates the film's moral landscape. They do not seek advantage or wealth. They act to prevent isolation, to spare others a wound they know too well. This act reframes the film's relationship with time. The past is not corrected to restore order, but to preserve connection. The goal is not perfection, but continuity of care. The final images of the game resurfacing, now awaiting new players, reinforce the film's most unsettling truth. Jumanji is not destroyed. It cannot be. It persists, patient and dormant, ready to resume when curiosity overcomes caution. This ending denies closure and preserves mystery. The danger has passed for these characters, but the condition remains. The world is unchanged, only navigated more wisely by those who remember. What gives Jumanji its lasting power is not its creatures or effects, but its respect for consequence. It understands that experiences shape identity irreversibly, even when circumstances change. Childhood lost is not returned intact. Time regained is not innocent. The film allows joy at the end, but it is a quiet joy, informed by what was survived. Decades later, Jumanji endures because it refuses to trivialize fear. It treats childhood not as a sanctuary, but as a threshold, where a single moment can divide life forever. It treats adulthood not as mastery, but as reconciliation with what was endured. The game is only a mechanism. The true journey is learning to continue after being changed. In the end, Jumanji does not ask whether the game can be beaten. It asks whether those who play can return with empathy intact. And in answering that question without spectacle or sentimentality, it earns a place not just in memory, but in reflection, echoing long after the drums fall silent and the board closes once more.